As Melissa smoothed the papers in front of her, she said in a clear, detached voice, "We need to adjust your compensation to industry standards, 30% less, with no bonuses going forward. It is just business." Austin gave her a nod while avoiding eye contact. A thorough study of administrative remuneration has been conducted by the corporate office. This aligns you with the average for the country. I was seated across from them in the recently renovated conference room of Desert Bloom Dental, which I had assisted in starting from the beginning. Our warm southwestern coral walls had just been painted a sterile gray to fit the new company image. Despite the wrath that was building inside of me, I maintained a perfectly neutral expression. I took the document they passed over the table and said, "I'll need to go over the terms carefully." I spoke in the same calm, businesslike tone that I had used in the hundreds of patient encounters I had overseen over the previous 18 years. Melissa smiled thinly and added, of course, obviously happy that I hadn't caused a scene. "Your decision must be made by Friday. Up until 3 months ago, I was the office manager of Chandler, Arizona's most prosperous dental clinic. My name is Barbara Green. I had collaborated with Dr. Franklin Hughes for almost 20 years, transforming Desert Bloom Dental from a 2-chair clinic into a flourishing facility with 6 treatment rooms and more than 3,000 devoted clients. The team had been anxious, but optimistic when Dr. Hughes announced his retirement last year. He reassured us that Southwest Dental Partners, the corporate entity purchasing the clinic, recognized the importance of our patient-centered approach. He had said, "They're keeping the entire team intact. They understand what makes us unique." Dr. Hughes was unaware that corporate dentistry functions in a different way. Names are not as important as numbers. Relationships are subordinated to efficiency. Furthermore, it seems like an 18-year-old, committed office manager may be boiled down to a spreadsheet line item. I saw our newest hygienist, Jessica, anxiously setting up her station for the next patient as I made my way back to my office. "Is everything all right?" she said softly. I gave a nod. "We're just talking about some administrative changes." Until I had absorbed the news personally, I wasn't prepared to convey it. I returned to my workstation, opened my drawer, and took out the business card I had been given at the regional dentistry conference 2 weeks prior. During lunch, Dr. Nathan Fuller had come up to me and said he was impressed with Desert Bloom's operations. "I'd love to talk to you about some ideas if you ever think about changing," he had stated. I had discreetly put the card away at the time. I now grabbed my phone and punched in the number. I've never thought of myself as unique. After all, the objective of healthcare administration is to design systems that are so effective that operations run smoothly no matter who is in charge of them. However, establishing relationships and creating dependable processes are 2 different things. It is possible to duplicate systems. It takes years to build a relationship. Dr. Hughes understood this from the day he hired me when I was a 32-year-old single mother with administrative experience but no dental background. He recognized something in me that went beyond my resume. "Barbara," he'd said during my interview, "I can teach anyone about dental procedures and insurance codes. What I can't teach is how to genuinely care about people." Over the years, I'd become more than an office manager. I was the face patients saw when they walked in, the voice that called to check on them after difficult procedures, the person who remembered their children's names and college graduations. I knew which patients needed extra time in the schedule, which ones required billing flexibility during hard times, and which ones would drive across town for their favorite hygienist. When elderly patients couldn't drive, I organized transportation. When families struggled financially, I found ways to work with insurance companies to maximize their benefits. When frightened children came in, I had special toys waiting and knew exactly which approach would calm their fears. My desk drawer contained 18 years of thank you cards, not addressed to Desert Bloom Dental, but to me personally. Austin and Melissa had been running Desert Bloom for 3 months now. They'd arrived with spreadsheets and corporate manuals, introducing efficiency protocols and patient processing improvements. Dr. Hughes had barely cleared out his office before they replaced our comfortable waiting room furniture with sleek, identical chairs that matched their corporate branding. The staff tried to adapt. I tried to explain our community's unique needs. Our Thursday evening hours are essential for our working families. I told them when they suggested cutting those appointments. And Mrs. Wilson always brings homemade cookies for the staff on Fridays. It's been her tradition for 12 years. We appreciate your input, Austin would say before proceeding with whatever change their corporate template dictated. I began noticing the subtle shifts in patient responses, the confused looks when they were rushed through check-in, the disappointed sighs when told certain services were no longer offered, the hesitation when asked to prepay for treatments. Has Dr. Hughes actually retired? Mrs. Peterson had whispered to me last week. This doesn't feel like the same place anymore. I had smiled and assured her we were still committed to excellent care. But walking back to my office after my compensation meeting with Austin and Melissa, I wondered if that was still true and, more importantly, if I could still be part of it. They want to cut my salary by 30%, I explained to Dr. Fuller 3 hours later. We sat in a quiet corner of Wildflower Bread Company, away from the lunch crowd. No more performance bonuses either. Dr. Fuller nodded thoughtfully, stirring his iced tea. Unfortunately, that's becoming standard practice when corporate groups acquire independent dental offices. They see administrative staff as an expense to minimize, not an asset to value. At 45, Nathan Fuller had the confident demeanor of someone who knew his worth. He'd spent the past decade working for various dental groups, but had grown increasingly frustrated with corporate dentistry's approach. I've been saving to open my own practice, he continued. Something smaller, more patient-focused. The kind of place where we know every patient by name, not by production value. That sounds like what Desert Bloom used to be, I said, unable to keep the wistfulness from my voice. Exactly. And that's why I wanted to talk with you. He leaned forward. Barbara, I've asked around. Everyone in the Chandler dental community knows you're the one who really built Desert Bloom. Dr. Hughes was an excellent dentist, but you created the experience that kept patients coming back. I felt my cheeks warm at the unexpected praise. We were a team. A team you coordinated, he insisted. I'd like to propose a partnership of sorts. I have the clinical skills and some capital, but I need someone who understands how to build and maintain a thriving practice. He paused, watching my reaction carefully. Someone like you. I blinked, surprised by the directness of his offer. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you equity, he clarified. 20% ownership in the new practice, with salary comparable to what you were making before the cut. I don't just need an office manager. I need a partner. The idea was simultaneously terrifying and exhilarating. After 18 years of security, the thought of starting fresh made my stomach tighten with anxiety. Yet beneath that fear was something else. Something that felt remarkably like hope. I don't know, Dr. Fuller. Starting a new practice from scratch. Not from scratch, he interrupted gently. With your experience and community connections, with your understanding of what patients in this area need and want. I stirred my coffee, considering his words. Southwest Dental would see it as direct competition. His smile contained a hint of challenge. They should. On the drive back to Desert Bloom, my mind raced with possibilities and concerns. The practical side of me listed all the reasons to simply accept the pay cut, job security, familiar surroundings, no disruption to my comfortable routine. I was 50 years old. Was this really the time to take such a risk? Yet, as I pulled into the parking lot and saw the new corporate signage that had replaced our familiar Desert Bloom logo, something hardened inside me. This wasn't just about money. It was about 18 years of dedication being reduced to a line item on a corporate balance sheet. My phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Fuller. No pressure, but the vacant office space next to Desert Bloom just became available. Perfect location. Just saying. I couldn't help but laugh at the audacity and the perfect poetic justice of his suggestion. You're considering what? My daughter Catherine stared at me across our kitchen table, her fork suspended midway to her mouth. At 28, she had inherited my practicality and caution, which made her reaction to my news entirely predictable. Opening a new dental practice with Dr. Fuller, I repeated, trying to sound more confident than I felt. As a partner, not just an employee. Mom, you've worked at Desert Bloom for nearly 2 decades. You're talking about competing directly against your former employer. Isn't that, I don't know, risky? I poured more iced tea into. Our glasses clinked, buying time to organize my thoughts. Our Sunday dinners had always been a safe space for honest conversation, and I needed that now more than ever. It's definitely risky, I acknowledged. But staying at Desert Bloom means accepting that my 18 years of service are worth 30% less than they were 3 months ago. Catherine's expression softened. I get that it's insulting. But starting a business at 50, next door to your current workplace, that seems extreme, even for you. I smiled. Really? Even for predictable, play it safe Barbara. You know what I mean. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I just don't want to see you get hurt, professionally or financially. Her concern was valid. I'd spent my adult life making careful, measured decisions. After her father left when she was 6, I'd prioritized stability above all else. Our modest home was nearly paid off. My retirement account was growing steadily. I'd established a comfortable, if not exciting, life. I've been doing some research, I said, pulling a folder from the sideboard drawer. Dr. Fuller has excellent credentials and a solid reputation. The location is perfect, patients wouldn't even have to change their driving route. And I've run the numbers. I opened the folder to reveal spreadsheets I'd spent the weekend creating. Even with conservative estimates for patient transfer, we could be profitable within 9 months. Catherine raised an eyebrow, impressed despite herself. You've really thought this through. I have, I admitted. But there's something else. I took a deep breath. This isn't just about money, Catherine. It's about standing up for myself for the first time in a very long time. The following morning, I requested a meeting with Austin and Melissa. They seemed surprised by my calm demeanor as I settled into a chair across from them. I've reviewed your compensation adjustment proposal, I began, using their corporate terminology. Unfortunately, I won't be accepting the new terms. Austin's relief was visible. I'm glad you're being reasonable, Barbara. The transition will be much smoother with your cooperation. I think you misunderstand, I interrupted gently. I'm not accepting the terms because I'm resigning. The stunned silence that followed gave me a small, satisfying glimpse of what was to come. Resigning? Melissa recovered first. Where would you go? You've been here your entire career. I'll be helping establish a new dental practice, I replied simply. Austin's expression darkened. Barbara, I remind you that your employment contract includes a non-compete clause. I smiled, feeling oddly liberated. I reviewed that with an attorney yesterday. The clause was in Dr. Hughes's original contract, but the terms weren't transferred properly when Southwest Dental took over. It's unenforceable. This wasn't entirely accurate. There was some legal gray area, but the momentary panic on their faces was worth the small deception. You can't seriously be considering competing against us, Melissa said. After everything this practice has done for you. Everything this practice has done for me? I repeated, my voice finally betraying a hint of the anger I'd been suppressing. I built this practice. I'm not competing against Desert Bloom. I'm reclaiming what I helped create. As I stood to leave, Austin's voice took on a threatening edge. The corporate office won't take this lightly. They have resources you can't imagine. I paused at the door. And I have relationships you can't replace. The next 3 weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. I worked my notice period at Desert Bloom with scrupulous professionalism, training my replacement, a nervous 24-year-old named Jennifer with a business degree but no dental experience, while simultaneously helping Dr. Fuller secure the lease on the adjacent office space. The irony wasn't lost on me. During the day, I maintained Desert Bloom's scheduling system and patient records. In the evenings, I designed a competing system for what would become Sunridge Family Dental. Do you think they suspect anything? Dr. Fuller asked one night as we reviewed floor plans for the new space. They know I'm leaving to work with another dental practice, I replied. They just don't know where yet. He grinned. The location is going to be quite a shock. It's a practical business decision, I said, echoing the corporate language Austin and Melissa had used so often. The demographic analysis supports it. In truth, the proximity was both practical and personal. Practical because it would make the transition seamless for patients who decided to follow me. Personal because, yes, I wanted Austin and Melissa to see exactly what they had discarded. My final day at Desert Bloom arrived with little fanfare. Austin and Melissa had grown increasingly cold as my departure approached, minimizing their interactions with me. The staff, sensing the tension, had organized a small farewell gathering during lunch. "We'll miss you, Barbara," Jessica said, handing me a card signed by everyone. "It won't be the same without you." I hugged her tightly. "I'll miss all of you too." I hesitated, then added carefully, "if any of you ever need anything." I'm not going far. Later, as I packed the personal items from my desk, Melissa appeared in my doorway. "Barbara, I hope you understand. This was never personal," she said, attempting a conciliatory tone. The compensation adjustments were based on corporate guidelines. I looked up from the box of family photos and thank you cards I'd accumulated over 18 years. That's the problem, Melissa. Dentistry is inherently personal. These aren't just patient files. They're people who've trusted us with their health, their fears, their families for years. She sighed. The dental landscape is changing. Small practices can't compete with corporate efficiency and purchasing power. Whatever you're planning, it won't work. I closed the box and stood. Perhaps. But I'm not trying to compete with corporate dentistry. I'm simply offering an alternative. As I carried my belongings to my car, I spotted Mrs. Wilson, the 82-year-old patient who faithfully brought cookies every Friday, struggling with the new automatic doors that had replaced our manual ones. "Let me help you," I said, setting down my box to assist her. "Oh, Barbara, thank goodness," she said, patting my arm gratefully. "Everything's changing so quickly around here. First those uncomfortable new chairs, then that complicated check-in computer." She lowered her voice. "And they told me they're discontinuing the emergency senior appointments. What am I supposed to do if my bridge comes loose on a weekend?" I helped her inside, feeling a fresh surge of determination. "Actually, Mrs. Wilson, I'm making some changes myself. May I call you next week to tell you about them?" That evening, I drove by what would soon be Sunridge Family Dental. The space was still empty, awaiting construction, but the "coming soon" sign had been installed that afternoon. From the parking lot, it was clearly visible from Desert Bloom's front windows. My phone buzzed with a text from Catherine. "Just drove by the future office. Bold move, Mom. I'm proud of you." For the first time since Austin and Melissa had announced my compensation adjustment, I felt completely certain I was doing the right thing, not just for my career or my finances, but for my self-respect. The real work was just beginning. The transformation of the empty storefront into Sunridge Family Dental happened with surprising speed. Dr. Fuller had secured a business loan based on his excellent credit and my detailed business plan, allowing us to create exactly the kind of practice we envisioned. While the physical construction progressed, I focused on building our team. My first call was to Jessica, the hygienist who had seemed most disappointed by the corporate changes at Desert Bloom. "I can't offer corporate benefits yet," I told her honestly over coffee. "But I can promise you'll have time to actually talk with your patients, not just clean their teeth." "You had me at actually talk with patients," she replied, smiling. The new schedule at Desert Bloom allows 15 minutes for scaling and polishing. 15 minutes. It's impossible. Within 2 weeks, I'd recruited Jessica and 2 other staff members from Desert Bloom. I tried not to feel guilty. I wasn't actively poaching, just presenting options to people who seemed unhappy with the new management. The real challenge was approaching patients. Ethically and legally, I couldn't access Desert Bloom's patient records or directly solicit their clients. But there was nothing preventing patients who knew me from reaching out once they heard about my new venture. And in Chandler, Arizona, news traveled fast. "Barbara, I saw the sign next door," Mrs. Peterson exclaimed when she called my personal cell phone. "Are you really opening a new dental office with Dr. Fuller right next to Desert Bloom?" "We are," I confirmed. "Our grand opening is next month." "Well, count me in." When that nice young girl at the front desk told me you'd left, I nearly cried. "It's not the same without you." She paused. "Can you transfer my records from Desert Bloom?" "You'll need to request that yourself," I explained carefully. "But we'd be happy to help you with the process when you come in." Similar conversations happened dozens of times over the following weeks. I was careful never to initiate contact with Desert Bloom patients, but I didn't discourage the calls that came my way through personal connections and word of mouth. 2 days before our grand opening, Austin appeared at the construction site, his expression thunderous. "This is how you repay Desert Bloom's investment in you," he demanded, gesturing at the newly installed Sunridge Family Dental sign. "By opening a competing practice literally next door?" I set down the box of office supplies I'd been carrying. "I don't owe Desert Bloom anything, Austin. I gave that practice 18 years of dedicated service. And now you're trying to destroy it. We've already had 68 patients request records transfers, 68. His face had turned an alarming shade of red. The corporate office is furious. A small, petty part of me wanted to smile at this confirmation that our strategy was working. Instead, I kept my expression neutral. "Patients have choices, Austin. That's how the free market works, isn't it? Isn't that what you explained when you cut my compensation by 30%? He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "This isn't over. Southwest Dental has attorneys on retainer who specialize in cases like this." "Cases like what, exactly?" Dr. Fuller appeared behind me, his tall frame imposing despite his relaxed tone. "A dental practice opening in a commercially zoned area? Patients exercising their right to choose their healthcare providers? Nothing illegal about that." Austin's gaze shifted between us. "You've made a powerful enemy," he said finally. As he stalked away, Dr. Fuller turned to me with raised eyebrows. 68 patients already? That's impressive." "It's just the beginning," I replied, watching Austin's retreating figure. "The real test comes next week." I wondered if Austin and Melissa were finally beginning to understand exactly what and who they had undervalued. Opening day at Sunridge Family Dental exceeded even my most optimistic projections. We had scheduled 20 patient appointments, a reasonable number for a first day of operations, but the waiting room was consistently full as people dropped by to see the new office and welcome me to my new role. By lunchtime, we had scheduled 47 additional appointments for the coming weeks. By day's end, that number had risen to 83. "This is unprecedented," Dr. Fuller said as we reviewed the day's numbers. "I've never seen a new practice generate this kind of immediate response." I smiled, thinking of the 18 years of relationships that had created this moment. It's not about the practice. It's about trust. From my new office, I could see directly into Desert Bloom's waiting room, now conspicuously empty. Throughout the day, I'd spotted Melissa watching our bustling reception area, her expression growing increasingly concerned. At 5 p.m., Jennifer, my replacement at Desert Bloom, appeared at our front desk, looking nervous. "Hi, Barbara," she said hesitantly. I was wondering, do you need another administrative assistant? "They're talking about letting me go. Apparently, the patient schedule is underperforming expectations." I felt a twinge of sympathy for her. 3 weeks into the job. She nodded miserably. "Austin says it's my fault for not maintaining patient retention. But they keep changing the systems and cutting appointment times. Mrs. Wilson yelled at me yesterday when I told her we couldn't accommodate her emergency visit." I thought for a moment. We hadn't budgeted for additional administrative staff yet, but Jennifer deserved better than being scapegoated for Austin and Melissa's failures. "We can start you part-time," I offered, "with the possibility of full-time as we grow." The relief on her face made any financial strain worth it. "Thank you, Barbara. I promise I'll work hard." As Jennifer left, Jessica approached with another stack of records transfer requests. 39 more today," she reported. "At this rate, we'll have half of Desert Bloom's patients by the end of the month." I picked up the stack, each form representing a person who had chosen to follow me rather than remain with the practice that had decided I was expendable. "It's not about revenge," I said, though the satisfaction I felt suggested otherwise. "It's about building something better." But watching Melissa's frustrated expression through the window, I couldn't deny the sweet sense of justice unfolding. 6 months after Sunridge Family Dental opened its doors, we had exceeded every benchmark in our business plan. What had begun as a risky venture had transformed into a thriving practice with over 2,000 patients, more than 2/3 of them transferred from Desert Bloom. The impact on our neighbor was impossible to ignore. Through the dental community grapevine, we heard that Southwest Dental Partners was considering selling the underperforming location. Austin had already been reassigned to another practice in Phoenix, and Melissa was desperately trying to rebuild patient relationships that had deteriorated under her management. "They're offering significant discounts to prevent more patients from leaving," Dr. Fuller mentioned one morning as we reviewed our weekly schedule. "Apparently corporate isn't happy with the quarterly numbers." I nodded, unsurprised. Discounts won't solve their fundamental problem. Patients don't want to be processed like products on an assembly line. The difference between our approaches was evident in every aspect of our operations. While Desert Bloom now rushed patients through abbreviated appointments, we maintained comfortable scheduling that allowed for genuine interaction. Where they emphasized efficiency metrics, we focused on patient satisfaction and health outcomes. Mrs. Wilson now brought her famous cookies to Sunridge every Friday, and we had reinstated the emergency senior appointments that had meant so much to our older patients. The waiting room featured comfortable Southwestern decor, reminiscent of the original Desert Bloom before corporate rebranding had stripped away its warmth and character. One Tuesday afternoon, I looked up from my desk to see Melissa standing uncertainly in my office doorway. "Do you have a minute?" she asked, her usual confidence noticeably absent. "Of course," I replied, gesturing to the chair across from me. Her hands were fumbling in her lap as she sat down. "I was curious as to how you accomplished it. How did you cultivate such a devoted patient base?" It was a genuine, almost desperate question. When I honestly responded, 18 years of treating people like people, not profit centers, there's no corporate template for that. Melissa gave a slow nod. "Next week, I'm getting transferred." Desert Bloom's performance decrease is unparalleled in the company's history, according to the regional manager. I could have answered smugly or with satisfaction. However, I had an unanticipated surge of empathy at witnessing her sincere pain. "I'm sorry it didn't work out." "Don't be," she murmured as she got up to go. "You demonstrated your argument. I just wish we had seen your worth sooner rather than later." I understood as she left that the triumph I had been relishing had nothing to do with watching Desert Bloom suffer. The goal was to establish a practice that would benefit both patients and employees. My need for vengeance had changed into something more significant: approval. That evening at supper, Catherine looked at me questioningly. "Mom, you look different. More content." As I filled our water cups again, I thought about this. Yes, I am. I used my devotion to Desert Bloom as a defining characteristic for years. I felt like I had lost a piece of who I was when it wasn't appreciated. I grinned, sensing that what I was about to say was true. However, it appears that I didn't lose anything. I discovered my own voice, which was better. In a toast, Catherine lifted her glass. "To finding your voice at 50. As I clinked my glass against hers, I reflected on the last year's journey, from longtime employee to company owner, from following instructions to making choices, to fresh starts at any age. As I reflected on the journey that brought me to this point, I saw that Austin and Melissa's efforts to minimize my value had, in fact, exposed it not just to Desert Bloom, but also to myself. Their business choice had been a wake-up call for me, and I felt oddly appreciative of that. My perception of my own contributions had completely changed as a result of the 30% salary decrease they attempted to enforce. Ultimately, their solely commercial choice had taught me the most intimate lesson of all. Sometimes the best form of retaliation isn't getting even. It is progressing.